Hello everyone. Now let's continue with the Angular introduction. We have seen the basics of Angular. Now, what is a single page application? It is an application, it is not an application of a unique HTML file, but a fully contained application in the browser that do not need to make the request for the new pages on the server. So in the previous web applications, or we can say websites, you must have seen there are a lot of links, and whenever you click on the link, it loads a different web page, HTML page, right? So those are the new requests that happen. But in this single page application, the complete application is there in the browser. Okay. And SPMX request just for the data that will be shown inside of the pages, accessing the backend using REST plus JSON services. Single page applications are faster. It limits the download of HTML, JS, CSS code, and it is very fast. Okay. Now these are the basics that we have seen. Now this is some environment settings for different editors. Angular CLI is great tool. Okay, it provides various commands for you to create a new project. For a new project and create the components, create services, and adds install some dependencies and things like that. So for example, a very simple command is ng new project name. Okay, so whenever you want to create a new Angular project, you will fire a command ng new and the project name. So it will download and it will create all the basic template for you. And if you open that in some Visual Studio or some editor like Atom, then you can see this folder structure. Okay, there is a src, there is a package.json and all. If you want to run this application, you can simply fire command ng-serve, okay, ng-server inside the project folder, and it will launch your application. It will launch it on a local host 4200 by default. And if you go onto that, if you copy this address and hit it in the web browser, you will see that this is the default page that gets loaded. Okay. Then components one of the important part of the or building block of the Angular application. Everything is the application whole application is divided into number of components, and each component will have a template, a HTML code, and some backend code. Okay, so let's see how to create the components. So Angular is based on the components, and there is already the main component called as app.component that shows the welcome to app page. So by default, there is one component created for you, which is in this app folder. Okay, so it will have its component.ts TypeScript file, it will have specification file, it will have a cascading style sheet file, and it will have HTML file for that component. So that's the default component that is generated. Then creating components, every component has three main parts. The component name, component.html, the HTML code of the component, a name component.css, the CSS style of the component, and name component.ts, that is a TypeScript of a component. So every component will have these three things: HTML, style, and TypeScript. Then our application will have three components. Let's create then with this command ng-gc, generate component and component name. So this is the command for creation of the component, and it will create a component for us. So we can say ng-gc header to create header component, ng-gc home, ng-gc footer to create a footer component, and so on. So whenever you fire these commands, it is going to create a component, and by default it will have a simple page. Okay, every component will have this like home works. So if the component name is home, it will have home works, an empty CSS file, and a TypeScript class. So there is a backend class for each component. So it will import few things from the core Angular core module. It will have these decorators. Decorators are of this form: at symbol, then the name of the decorator, and that's a function call kind of thing. And inside it can have some parameters and their values, parameter value, things like that. And then your class component class, it implements this whatever, then constructor and a typical object oriented class. Each component has this selector. So selector is the tag which you can embed this component in other HTML files. Okay. Then Angular creative. So let's erase the contents of template, and then put our component selectors in order for the components will be shown. So when you run that, when you add this app header, app home, and app footer, so these are the selectors of the three components that we created. Then you will see that header works, home works, and footer works. Okay, so ng server to run the Angular development to development server, and then you can see the output. So that's it for this tutorial in which we have seen some further topics of the Angular, like creation of the components and some more basics. So let's continue in the next lecture.